Great, thank you. Call to order. I now call to order the Marin Wildfire Executive Committee meeting of June 6, 2024. Roll call, Josh, please.
Director Goins.
Recording
Here. Oh, so you.
Here still.
Director Kurtz. Director Rodoni.
Here.
Director Hilliard. Director McMillan.
Yes, here. Agenda adjustments. I will entertain requests to adjust the order of the agenda. Anybody? Number 4, open time for public expression. The public is welcome to address the executive committee at this time on matters not on the agenda that are within the jurisdiction of the committee. Please be advised that pursuant to Government Code Section 54954.2, the committee is not permitted to discuss or take action on any matter not on the agenda. Comments may be no longer than 3 minutes, and is it 3 minutes? 2 minutes, excuse me, and should be respectful to the community. Please silence your cell phones during the meeting and mute your microphone when not reporting out. Josh, is there any public comment?
We had a hand raised, but it just went away. Stephen, did you have a comment? Oh.
Yeah,
Stephen
his
Keith.
hand's up.
Hi, no. Hi, folks. It was just that I couldn't hear anything for a while, and then you turned the sound on, so that's why I lowered my hand.
Okay.
Thank you, Stephen. Executive Officers Report. Mark Brown will present the Executive Officers Report.
Good morning, everybody. Let me get my PowerPoint fired up. As I'm sure you all know, June is Pride Month, and we always like to recognize what month we are honor or what initiative or group of people that we're trying to honor. And instead of trying to say anything profound, I think it's better for us just to put something up on the screen. We all have a connection with every one of the months. I'm sure we all have a connection to Pride Month, and we can reflect on our own why Pride Month is important for us individually, for us as an organization, and for us as a society. All right, fire season update. As I'm sure you guys know, fire season has started. We had a couple of fires that have generated some interest. One was the Corral Fire, which was earlier this week in Altamont Pass. And then yesterday there was a 60-acre fire within the footprint of the Glass Fire. Mm-hmm. And so I think this is a good opportunity to discuss what those fires are and what they aren't. Because I think we need to keep the right context to the fires that we are having. So the Corral Fire really got a lot of people excited. It was 14,000 acres in a day. And, but we know that the media has a much higher interest in what's going on in the wildfire space than they used to. For those of us that have been responding to fires in the Altamont Pass for the 30 plus years, we know that a 10 to 14,000 acre fire in Altamont Pass in late May, early June is a normal fire. And, but what that reminder is though, is grass fires are still dangerous. We are still at risk of grass fires right now, and grass fires can destroy structures in the same way that the Corral Fire destroyed one structure. So it's not necessarily indicative of a huge fire season, but what it is indicative of is the daily risk that we have from wildfire, where a grass fire can get to a house faster than our fire engines can, and that's why people need to be home hardening and doing different defensible space. That's what the Corral Fire is to me. The Crystal Fire started within the footprint of the Glass Fire, but on the Napa side. And my neighborhood, which had the Glass Fire go through, had a lot of people were panicked. Oh no, a fire has started in the Glass Fire footprint. And I only bring this up because I don't want to get to the point where people are get to a level of fatigue from fear and anxiety for fires that really have no threat to us. It's a 60-acre fire that was in an area that's burned within the last 4 years. It doesn't have a lot of threat. And as hot as it was yesterday, it wasn't the same weather as September 30th, 2020. And so that's where it's, I think, our public education to allow people to understand the fire dynamics that they can. That fire was 10 miles from my house, and I had neighbors asking me, do we need to be worried about that fire? And so I just don't want to get to the point where we have that fear fatigue and maybe even evacuation fatigue, and then we get to the point of people that crying wolf, and then they actually ignore when it should be important. So Also, there was a recent article in the Marin IJ, and I'm really disappointed with the headline. And Dennis was at the meeting, and it was the presentation that Chief Weber gave to the Board of Supervisors. And the headline that came out of it was that Marin County Fire predicts a mild fire season. That is not what Chief Weber said to the Board of Supervisors. Chief Weber said it's going to be most likely the predictions are for a slow start, but we could still have a very devastating late end of the season. So I wish the IJ would have reported on that accurately. Because I watched the meeting and I know you were there. I'm sure you probably heard the same thing I did.
Headlines don't always reflect the story.
Nope. Speaking of headlines, we had a great article in the IJ about the evacuation tools that we have provided based on a presentation that we gave to the Transportation Authority of Marin. And Charlotte and I had the opportunity to present the evacuation egress risk assessment and Ladris AI. And the main reason why we went to the Transportation Authority of Marin is, first of all, we've been working closely with them. Derek McGill, one of their planners, was on, as you might remember, on our technical advisory team. And he was instrumental in making the tool. And as we said in the article, and we said during the presentation, our member agencies have great experience with fire behavior. We aren't traffic experts. So we want to get that tool into the hands of our traffic experts and use that tool. And so working through TAM, and then Charlotte and Ted Briggs will be presenting to the Public Works directors on June 20th. That's how we intend to get that tool into the hands of traffic planners. And we also have an opportunity to demonstrate Ladris AI and run a scenario for Fairfax. And some people might have been scared by the numbers that came out, but that the context is that we actually, in the scenario that we ran, we blocked Sir Francis Drake. And Sir Francis Drake was not an evacuation route. And so the two zones that we had in Fairfax took 2 hours and change to get to the Civic Center. Again, Civic Center is not when they're safe. They're safe when they get on Sir Francis Drake or the other surface streets. But what we wanted to show is like how live time decisions could be made, and they see, wow, it's going to take that long because of that road closure. What if we open up a second shelter and we decrease the evacuation time by an hour? And that's just an example of what Ladris AI could provide to the incident commanders during a fire, and also as a planning and training tool. I skipped the insurance bullet point, and I just wanted to update you that on June 10th, we will be presenting to the Operations Committee of the efforts that we are taking in helping solve the insurance crisis. And I'm as excited as I have been when it comes to the efforts that we've had, and we made an extremely important connection recently. And we are putting together a multi-layered, multi-participant proposal that spans multiple states to create some pilot communities so that the reinsurance and the insurance industry can actually acknowledge and recognize the mitigation that's being done at the community, block, and parcel level. Also recognize the response capabilities of the jurisdiction when they make their decisions about whether or not they're going to insure or not insure. So the Operations Committee will get a full presentation, and we will be seeking feedback from them Monday coming up. Then we will present to the Exec Committee, and this will be our first warning. The Exec Committee won't be on July 4th because July 4th is the first Thursday. The Exec Committee will be on July 11th, and then we'll give the same presentation to the full board on July 18th. And speaking of those two meetings, JPA proposed revisions. We have already worked with our ad hoc subcommittee of the board with that. We've taken it to the Marin Managers Association, received feedback from Marin managers. We are going to Operations Committee on Monday to get their feedback, and then we will be bringing those proposed revisions to Exec on the 11th and to the full board on the 18th. The path after that is if the full board accepts all the revisions, then I'll work with each of the individual jurisdictions to get that on their calendar for approval of their boards. I'll leave it to our board members and their councils and boards to decide if they want to have it as a consent item, or maybe if they feel like they want to highlight some of the activities in Marin Wildfire, we can turn it into a presentation on Marin Wildfire and discussion about the JPA revisions. And then one more reminder about Daniel Swain on July 10th, next door in our board chambers. Also, we will have a remote option for that. We think the number of people that want to attend will likely exceed the occupancy of next door. And then another reminder of Ember Stomp, and forgive me.
September 7th.
Thank you. I remembered that before the meeting. September 7th, and we've been having great participation of our board members. When we get closer, we'll again do signups to have board members and staff attend, and so we can see all the residents, have great conversations with the residents. With that, I'll stop my screen share and take any questions.
Questions from our 3 board members?
I have one for you, Mark, on the evacuation tools. Great article, and thank you for being present. It's just nice to see what appears to be a handoff and getting it in the hands of the folks that are professionals. The question that I have is that how does the AI alternative switch, when you flip the switch to turn this one off, turn a route off and something on, how does the evacuee become aware of that switch in the direction? I'm just asking from a practical standpoint.
That's where the alerting system would come in, and we would give updates through Alert Marin.
So you're through Nixle or whatever, you get, back.
And also traffic control of the law enforcement.
And those tools are integrated with like Waze and the navigation tools. Not all of them at this point, but they're rolling out integration with the tools you use to navigate on your phone. So it would automatically reroute you if you're navigating out.
Yeah, because I've had folks ask about evacuation.
It's multi-pronged. We would reissue, hey, your evacuation shelter is this, through Alert Marin.
Yeah.
We would again, the Genesis Protect does have connections through Waze, and if so, people use that for their map routing. But the best way is traffic control, law enforcement going to actually know we want you to go that way.
Great. And then on the insurance, I'm so thrilled and actually proud of the work that you're doing. Thank you, and along with the team. I mean, is there kind of an indication here that should we begin to think that we're going to be part of that this body and the work that we're doing here is going to be integral to the proposal? And I don't want to get ahead of the game, but I've had the discussion. So
we will be part of the formation, but we will not be the entity that leads it.
Okay, but a participant?
Yes, a lead participant, but we won't be managing it.
Right. No, we don't want to manage it.
Who will the lead be?
We don't know. The proposal would be that we're actually seeking funding for this, and actually to contract for a project manager is the tentative. But we're still very, very early, so I can't really get more into details, because not that I can't share it, it's that they're still being formulated.
We need to assemble the team and the stakeholders and create the budget.
Yeah, I suspect will be a data source.
Absolutely, and our in-kind services, because we're going to expect efforts from all the communities. Most of our in-kind services will be providing the data of what we're already doing. I do have one go back, and that is why we're in here rather than next door. We have what's called the Association of Contract Counties. It's so there's 6 contract counties for CAL FIRE, and Marin being one of them. They have quarterly meetings, and one of those quarterly meetings tends to be on the larger side, and that's what today is. So we have the 6 contract counties senior staff. We have CAL FIRE senior staff from Sacramento, Redding, and Riverside, and then we have staff from each of the CAL FIRE units that adjoin a contract county. CAL FIRE unit adjoins a contract county in there. So we have quite a few people, and since they were hosting in our shop, they gave me an opportunity to give a little description of what Marin Wildfire is doing. And I talked about what we're doing, how we're doing it, but I also talked about the insurance initiative that we are looking, and I promised them that I'm going to be using the network and the relationships that we have in that room to bring geographical diversity to that initiative, because that's really what we need. We need multiple communities buying in. So based on the body language that I saw in there, they'll be looking forward to phone calls.
Just a question on Jason's headline quote. Do you think he should go back and clarify that with a letter to the editor or something?
He and I have been talking about it. I'm not sure. I could follow up with him.
Yeah, I just don't want to give people a misimpression that it's time to be passive.
Yeah, I'll have some more follow-up with Jason on that.
Okay, great.
I'm in agreement, and again, I repeat, I stated this at the last board meeting, but in Monterey, it was stated that the winter that we've had here is nearly identical to the winter that preceded the 2017 fire season. So, yeah, we need to get the facts out there. This is real stuff, and let's keep, and harden your home.
Yeah.
In terms of too much rain and too much vegetation. is
Yeah,
that what you mean?
wet,
The timing.
Yeah.
vegetation, and then into the fall, the northeastern winds and ignition, kaboom.
Okay. Any, okay, public comment on this item?
None at this time.
Great. Any further discussion by our board? No, moving on to the consent calendar. Number 6, the opportunity for public comment on the consent calendar items will occur prior to the committee's discussion of the consent calendar. There's only one item on the consent calendar, so let's take public comment on the consent calendar. None, okay. Could we entertain a motion if no members want to pull the item?
I'll move the consent calendar.
Thank you, Dennis. Bruce seconds. All those in favor? Aye. Great, thank you. Number 7, discussion item. The annual cost of living increase for current Marin Wildfire employees for fiscal year 24-25. Mark
Yep.
Brown.
And based on our compensation policy that the board passed last year, we have a cost of living adjustment that can be acknowledged or approved by the board based on the April CPI, which is this year it's 4%, but the cap in the policy is a 3.5% cost of living adjustment. We would be looking at all of our employees minus the senior wildfire mitigation specialists, since we just did the cost analysis on them. They just started working. It doesn't make a lot of sense to include those positions in the cost of living adjustment. And I meant to add in my fiscal impacts of the staff report, it will be added into the fiscal impacts of the staff reports for the board meeting, that the financial impact to Marin Wildfire would be just under $21,000 a year to get that 3.5% COLA adjustment. And that is exclusive of the executive officer.
Questions?
No questions.
Public comment on this item?
Oh, yes. We have one raised hand.
Yeah, I've never on raises based on the CPI. If the CPI, all you're going to give an employee is 3.5%, somebody's getting hurt, and I don't think it's fair to dump on employees. So my suggestion to the executive committee and the board is just get rid of the cap. If the CPI is high, it's fine. If it's low, that's better for us, but it doesn't matter. Sorry, that's just my point.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thanks for input.
Mark, do you want to respond to that?
Do
No.
we need to respond?
Okay.
No.
Okay.
Thanks, Stephen.
Any further discussion? All right, number 8, Board of Directors Agenda Review, the draft agenda for the June 20th, 2024 board meeting. Mark.
And it's, as you guys can see, the agenda is pretty short and sweet. We do anticipate an addition to the consent calendar for an update to our professional services agreement with Willow Labs, so we'll be adding that. And we will also be removing the ATC update from the agenda because the ATC will not have met and there's nothing to update for you on that. And then Charlotte is going to give you a preview of our wildfire risk perception survey presentation that you will be getting as part of an information item. So I'll pass it off to Charlotte.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Good morning, members of the executive committee, members of the public. My name is Charlotte Jourdain. I'm an independent contractor for Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority. So as you are aware, this is a project we've been engaged in for just over a year. to conduct a wide survey of our community in terms of their perception of risk. As a reminder, this exercise complements other existing surveys and other qualitative data to understand the perception of the public. Specifically, this effort is aimed at working with community-based organizations to increase the participation of communities that are traditionally underrepresented in large-scale community surveys. We think this is very important because the ability to perceive risk is key to engagement and preparation, such as early departure in the event of an evacuation, but also other behavior change that we're trying to include, such as defensible space, home hardening, etc. The goal is to compare and contrast perceived versus assessed risk, and to identify programming needs, guide communication, and enhance targeted education and outreach. And then the data will also allow us to benchmark ourselves and track progress towards more adaptation. The community partners we worked with are listed on this slide. We did not find a dedicated community partner in Central Marin, but our team worked to gather responses door to door through the community, through events and other means. So we have pretty full coverage here of all of our JPA zones. At a glance, the survey initially included over 220 participants in focus group for the design phase only. So we did a lot of iteration around the questions to make sure that people understood and that the communication and the answer to the questions we were gathering was meaningful. There was over 48 questions, and I'm still waiting for the average time to complete, but this was a significant involvement on the part of the community. So I think we can thank our residents and respondents for their efforts here. We gathered over 1,000 survey responses. 73% were renters, 21% were owners. Keep in mind the communities that we were targeting for the survey, and 6% were living with other living arrangements. I'll provide a little bit more insights on the survey at a glance here. I'd like to go over the main findings, not that I find them to be the most concerning or the highest level of saliency, but there's so much data and so much information. I chose to organize this around each of the goals. So I'm going to present one or two examples of the findings around each goal, and then I'll walk you through the next steps. So by no means is this a summary of everything. This is just an illustration and tidbits on what we have found. So overall concerns, 40% of our respondents are extremely concerned about the risk of wildfire to their households. And Latinx respondents, I did check the spelling on that, that's how you say plural of Latinx, are more likely to be extremely concerned compared to whites or African Americans. So 46% for Latinx and 25% for whites and African Americans. All of the survey questions I should mention are, we are able to cross-reference by age, income, and race, and also renter versus owner. And many of the questions are tied to the location of the respondents. Not all of them, because it's not always meaningful, but we can overlap where the response or the concerns came from with some of our other tools. So it's a GIS exercise. 27% of the respondents are extremely concerned about getting or keeping their wildfire insurance. And interestingly here, there was no difference between the level of concern for renters versus owners, which I interpret to mean that most renters probably understand that the cost will get passed on to them if insurance costs were to increase. Vegetation management, our first goal, just again, as an illustration of the findings, 35% of respondents answered yes to the questions, have there been any projects to remove or manage vegetation to reduce fire risk in the open space near you? And again, that near you, we can cross-reference based on the responses, whether there was, what project there was. In Central Marin, the respondents, 76% of the responded yes. In Southern Marin, 57%. West Marin 49, Novato 27, San Rafael 24. I will mention that a lot of the responses were gathered after the Greater Ross Valley Shaded Fuel Break was publicized, but before Novato and especially San Rafael did a lot of their communication work. So this is probably what explains a little bit of this difference here. Around our second goal, evacuation risk, there's a lot of data on evacuation with the survey because this is clearly something that the community is concerned with. 64% of respondents are very or extremely concerned about traffic preventing them from leaving their neighborhood during an evacuation. This percentage goes up to 85% of respondents in San Rafael, particularly the Canal neighborhood. I'm going to show you an illustration of what I mean by the difference in perception versus assessed risk. So this is an illustration of the survey platform. The darker red means extreme concern, and then a little bit lighter is very concerned, and a little bit lighter is concerned, and so on. So you could see the Canal neighborhood, Kerner Boulevard here in the middle, that shows the level of concern is very high to extreme. Now, if I pull the exact same location on our evacuation risk assessment, which you remember compiles fire, fuels, traffic risk, and communication risk to get people out of their homes, we see that the risk is closer to low, I would say, low or moderate, depending on the street. So we have a disconnect here between the perception and what we assess to be what could happen in reality. Now, that doesn't mean we don't need to do everything we can to help and implement as much preparation as possible, but I want to illustrate that a perception survey is just that, it's perceptions. And Mark, I don't know if you want to add anything about your thinking around how the Canal neighborhood in particular would live through a wildfire evacuation.
Because quite frankly, the impacts of the canal most likely are going to be smoke impacts rather than actual wildfire impacts. And I think it's discussing those realities. And if there is a fire within the canal, then we have the tools available to facilitate. And I would hazard a guess, just because anyone who's driven through that area anytime during the day, the baseline traffic is already very difficult. And during a wildfire event that impacts the canal, we definitely would be putting traffic control with law enforcement to help speed things up. So I think it really is a messaging thing than it is anything else.
Thank you, Mark. And I will say that I'm looking forward to getting together with San Rafael Fire and the Canal Alliance and other groups to discuss this. That will be part of our next steps.
Charlotte, I'd just add,
Yes.
that's my district in Eastern San Rafael, and that's consistent with what we're hearing.
Okay.
Because they're concerned about wildfires and evacuation. And part of it is because there's only two ways out.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the most dense population in Marin County. There's 16 to 20,000 people in that community. And so just the mass of it, if you think about trying to move that many people, should it have to happen, it's pretty massive.
And the ratio of vehicles to people.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. So I think you're accurate based on the data we have, but I think there are other circumstances that we probably need to interject. And just yesterday, I talked to Stephen Torrance about looking for grants to actually do a focused planning effort in Eastern San Rafael because of the density. So it might work well with what you're doing too. So.
And there's a lot, I just want to be clear that there's a lot more data about evacuation from these very same respondents. So we have the ability to dig through and understand a lot more. And I think Ladris AI in particular will come handy here when it comes to running scenarios and sort of peeling the onion and looking at what actually might happen.
Yeah.
Also, all of the surveys gathered by, all of the survey respondents in that neighborhood were gathered by Canal Alliance. And I think they have the avenue to help us reach those respondents in that community.
Is there a heavy reliance on public transportation in that?
There is, yeah.
So that's a
Very
huge
transit
factor.
yeah.
Are there any shelter in place locations in that neighborhood?
Maybe pick a weed potentially.
Yeah.
Like it really depends on the event. Like you say, if it's a wildfire and it's just smoke, you may not be moving.
Maybe shelter in place in
place.
their own residence.
Yeah.
But if it's an earthquake or something else, it might be quite different.
So some of the messaging is really important.
Yeah.
So I don't want to put San Rafael on the spot. So this is just an example. There's examples, similar level of data and granularity for all of your jurisdictions. I don't move on to goal number 3, our grants. So I will say that the vast majority of respondents reported that they either did not know, 51%, or believe that there was no financial assistance, 38%, available to reduce fire hazards. Now, remember, these are not necessarily people who have been inspected and therefore are eligible or in contact with our home inspection and home evaluation program. Latinx were the least likely to report believing financial assistance was available compared to white and African Americans. And we found no correlation with income here. So I do think that at first glance, and again, we will be examining all of these results with our community-based partners, but the grants program, working together with the home evaluation program with some heavy marketing efforts is something that's needed here. In terms of public education and outreach, and we'll be working closely with Fire Safe Marin on these results as well. But to the question, how would you better prepare for wildfire? Respondents 60 and older are more likely to want to attend, to be ready to attend a small in-person neighborhood gathering compared to respondents in the 18 to 60 age range. But younger adults are more likely to want to attend a large in-person community events. And of course, independent online research is a close second choice. The one thing that nobody wants to do anymore is virtual meetings and Zoom calls. In terms of red flag warnings, 20% of respondents earning less than $44,750 per year don't know what a red flag warning means. 29% of respondents under the age of 60 don't know what that means, and 14% of respondents 16 or older know to temporarily leave the area due to mobility issues. So good news, but probably still a little bit too low of a percentage. 35% of Latinx respondents don't know what a red flag warning is. I think this is interesting because we talk about red flag warning a lot internally, and it's become a colloquial term, but not everybody knows what that is. For our last goal, defensible space and home hardening, 33% of respondents believe that vegetation in their yard is a fire risk. 49% believe it's not. Whether or not they have resolved it, we don't know. And 19% don't know whether it's a fire risk or not. 80% of Latinx respondents do not know what a defensible space evaluation is. Keep in mind, again, we're targeting communities that a lot of our agencies have not been able to evaluate HOAs and higher density housing, so they focus on single housing, so there might be some explanation there. It's not all bad, it just needs to be further investigated. So to conclude, our very next steps is to provide the results to each of the community-based agencies, walk them through their results, their platform, and then we will be scheduling meetings. I have scheduled 2 at the end of June, and then the rest will come in the summer, to meet together with the local fire agency, the community-based partner, Fire Safe Marin, and MWP staff, I think that will be me, to review the results and dig into what they feel the projects need to be, and work together to come up with a plan. As a reminder, your board has approved a $35,000 budget for the next fiscal year to help with this process. So a lot of work to be done, but very interesting, and hopefully this can help to make a difference.
And 35,000 is just to help coordinate. And what I'm seeing in here, and we're going to want to be sure not to go down a lot of rabbit holes when we present to the board on the 20th, because it's fascinating data, and it's going to spark a lot of ideas amongst our 17 board members. But you know what would happen if we all start going down that rabbit hole. But the good news is, as far as what I'm seeing, is a lot of it is public education.
Yeah.
And we can work with Fire Safe Marin with the existing public education budget that we have based on those. So while that $35,000 number may sound low, the vast majority of the work is pub ed, and we have a significant amount of money already dedicated for pub ed, and we're going to be able to start addressing these issues immediately.
I want to go back several years when I don't know who gave us the presentation, but gave there was a presentation to MWPA as to public perceptions and awareness of hazards. And we received a report, it's on record, that I think it was 95 or 98% of Marin residents were aware of wildfire hazard, and it was on par with what used to be the one issue that we're residents mostly tracked was education. And I'm having a hard time reconciling these low numbers to the survey that we received years ago on record, and just, I want to go back to who our partners were, and in survey design, and statistics are numbers, and it's a reflection of those people we're contacting, and I've done statistical survey myself. So I'm having a hard time reconciling the old numbers that we received and then the numbers in the survey, and I think there might be, anyway, let me just state that.
So, I can answer that. That survey, and I can't remember the name of the firm, but they're a political consulting firm that we use actually to help with Measure C.
Yeah.
Between myself and Fire Safe Marin, we re-engaged them with a survey that the questions were tailored in a slightly different way than this question.
Yes, yeah.
And as Charlotte pointed out, this survey was specifically focused at those who are underrepresented.
Okay, let's
in
make
other
that
surveys.
wasn't that clear to me, and that's what I saw in the initial slide, the five community organizations that you work with. So I think it's important that it contextually, that you make the point that, Mark, that you just articulated. Maybe you did say it, and my hearing's not that great, but I think it's important that we not think that we're down to 35% of residents, where this is a reflection of there's a broader population. I mean, I found myself thinking, let's look at a map of how many doors we've knocked on, whose doors have we knocked on, and how does this correlate with, and I would think that we want to do understand where we've been, and the perceptions in general community is as important. But I guess it matters what question you're asking, and who you're asking it to.
Right.
Well, maybe in the presentation to the board, you need a little slide that brings up what Bruce is talking about in terms of a broader survey and perceptions. And this survey is really drilling down into unique areas that have been underrepresented in the past work.
I'm pretty sure that other survey was not a random stratified
Yeah.
survey either.
Yeah.
So it was like you respond if you want to survey. This is not this.
Yeah.
So that's very
So
different.
that's very biased.
That's the main reason we wanted to run this effort too. It's because this is not you respond if you want to. You're selected to respond based on whether or not you stratified.
That's a good point.
The sample.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can include that.
We'll emphasize that for sure.
How much information are you planning on presenting to the board? Because based on Mark's comment about going down the rabbit holes, I think we want to be careful.
You tell me. Should I cut it down?
No, I thought that was good. I'm just wondering
I
if there's
thought so.
attachments and,
This is it. We're not planning on going. I think if we add anything more, I mean, I feel like even the Centerfell example is already putting it on the spot quite a bit.
Yeah, even
I
with this
don't-
amount, there could be 17 different rabbit holes we go down.
And maybe Mark, you could offer, or offer if you have comments, if you have them, to how they might direct that initiative.
I think it's
And to-
important to emphasize that the Greater Novato Shaded Field Break and the San Rafael, San Anselmo occurred subsequent to when a lot of this information was gathered.
Yeah.
And that's why the Ross Valley number is so much higher than Novato and San Rafael, because
Yeah,
that's a
shocking.
really big disconnect.
Actually,
Well, Novato, it wasn't. So it was kind of like after Novato.
Oh,
But Novato
What's going on in
is slower
Novato,
in
Bruce?
rollout, so
Yeah,
they haven't done
I-
the full
I-
effort.
I actually see this as a good thing.
sleepy
though.
little town.
Yeah.
It shows that the time, I really do think that it had more to do with the timing than the outreach that's going on. And that we didn't have the time for the outreach in Novato, and especially San Rafael field reduction zone to sink in. It shows that the outreach in the Greater Ross Valley worked. And I think it's more of an indication of timing for Novato and San Rafael.
And it really is a targeted survey too.
Yeah.
So, the
Correct.
broader survey to be probably a lot different, including everyone. I mean, if you just look at the slide that shows 70% rentals and 20-something homeowners, that's the complete opposite of what it is in reality.
Mhm.
So it's a very targeted effort.
Actually, yeah, that's a very good point. We worked with North Marin Community Services through their ambassadors program, and if I could bring in the map of where the responses were gathered, it's away from the fuel break, for sure,
Yeah,
so.
and Northern Community Services clientele are unique, and
They're the ones
they're,
Yeah.
see, these are.
Maybe in the board presentation, you want a little parenthetical about each of the agencies that worked with us, just to kind of put into context who they represent.
Okay,
So it's really clear. Maybe that could be in the staff report too.
you mean like a description of their community?
Yeah, their demographic, yeah.
Okay.
So, and maybe put that in the staff report so people can digest that prior to the presentation.
That's gonna make it quite a bit longer, so, I mean, I can, but.
Just a brief description.
Yeah,
of
just
what
a
they-
parenthetical.
what they work with, what communities they work with, or their mission.
Okay, yeah, sure.
I found red flags going up in my head when I'm thinking about, at our last meeting, Dennis, you had suggested that we look at a subcommittee to take a look at renewal. And when I saw those numbers, I was going, ding, 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 we have a problem. So, we have more work to do, and I think we have some different efforts that we can be launching that'll address, outside of this topic. It just, we have some more work to do.
There's always work to do. Any other questions or comments from the board? Public comment on this item?
We have one
Steve?
hand raised.
Yes. Stephen?
Somebody mentioned early on that it's important to get people's attention, to get them listening, and that is more likely to lead to action than sort of passive stuff, and not necessarily passive, but articles in the IJ and other things. One of the best things that we have available to us to get people's attention is smoke. When there's a wildfire up in Sonoma or Napa or anywhere and the smoke gets in this area, everybody talks about it. My suggestion is see if MMWD would be willing to try to concentrate on getting their prescribed burns, maybe sometime in August, so that it could be a lead up to Ember Swamp or any other public education efforts. They still, I'm sure, have plenty of places where they have piles that they would like to burn. And I don't know whether, Mark, you would even recommend that you and Bruce, or the fire people, would it be a problem waiting until August? But if they could, it would get a lot of people's attention, and all of them get more action out of people, would be more productive. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Any final discussion on this item? Spencer, I'll call on you as a member of the public.
Right.
Yes.
I just wanted to ask, in the methodology of this particular survey, you're obviously going for underrepresented communities. I suspect a lot of people think about Marin in terms of geographic areas. The canal is an obvious example. We're in the city, Hamilton. Would it be helpful to actually talk about geographic areas in connection with this survey, is where there are concentrations of the people who are surveyed? I think the public would have a better handle on what you're talking about if you're able to put it in that context.
Thank you.
Good, thank you. Any final discussion? All right, number 9, we are going to move to closed session. As noted on the agenda, the executive committee will adjourn to closed session for labor negotiations related to the executive officer. Before we go into closed session, the public has the opportunity to speak on this closed session item. Is there any public comment?
No, it's time.
Great. Seeing no public comments, we will now adjourn to closed session, and we will return to open session following that discussion to announce any reportable action. So I guess I'll come get you once we're done.
Yep.
Both of you. Thank you.
Thanks, Charlotte.
Thank
You
you.
were
Thanks,
great.
Charlotte.
Thank you so much.
Mm.
We are. Video's back on, unmuted.
Okay, so
Martina.
we have adjourned the closed session and we're returning to open session. There were no reportable actions taken in closed session. We're moving on to number 10. Do any committee members have requests for future agenda items? Hearing none, we will adjourn the meeting at 10:58. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Martina.
Bye, Ann. Thank you.
Bye-bye.